G'day and welcome to the Murder Valley YouTube channel. I did report on one of the videos I did earlier that the motor in my Bulldog has gone beyond its service point, and there's no point wasting time with it anymore. So it's race night tonight, and I haven't done anything about it. So it's time to replace the motor in here. So I've got a new old stock one here. This is actually probably left over from my old Tommy Turbo stock. I thought I'd give one of those a go that I bought years ago. That's why it says made in Taiwan on the side. Now, this side's got the red line on it, so I put the plus over here because that's when you reinstall it, the chassis. That goes in there, and then the motor spins the right way, so when I pull the motor apart and put it back together, it lines it back up without even having to think about it. So what I'm doing is, this is what I do to brand new motors, to prepare them for racing with. So if you haven't seen one of these before, this is a motor brush spreader. You put the pins in there, it lifts the motor brushes away, and then you can pull the motor apart without damaging it. So, something I left out, something I'd already looked at before I pulled this apart. That's much too much free play for what I would like. So, I've got a thing just here of just cheap washers I've bought. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to see, it's okay to put a metal washer on this end of the motor, but even on this end, as long as that nylon one's in to stop metal from touching the contacts of the comm and blowing your motor up, because that wouldn't be a good thing. So all I want to do is just shim some of that movement out. I don't want it tight, and that has no movement, and that's too tight. So how do you fix that? You don't pull that out, that's for sure. Okay, so take that off. In your local variety superstore, $2 shop, whatever, there's always these nail files that people who look after their nails, I was going to say women, but that's not necessarily the case now. If you're doing this all the time, probably there's better ways to do it, but I am slowly wearing out the end of my finger. So it was a fair bit too tight, which is why I've taken a fair bit off, but after this, it's just trial and error until you get it right. So I have not run this motor at all. I may have other ones. I may have other ones in my collection that may perform higher than this one. I haven't bothered putting that much effort into it. I'm just going to work on this one and get this one up to... it's still too tight. It's close, but it's still too tight. So back to a bit more sanding. I'm doing this in real time, so you can see how long it takes. It doesn't take forever, but it doesn't take 5 seconds either. The washer came off. Really? Obviously it's magnetic. So I think these, or is that too tight? There's almost no movement in it. No, I want to take that further. Keep on dropping that washer. It's only reasonably soft metal, it's not that hard to get down. But this is the type of racing I prefer. I don't just pull parts out and upgrade them. I get what's there and get the maximum that I can out of every part there. And it's amazing how much extra speed you can pull out of a motor just by doing that. Alright, you know what? Very, very small, but that'll do me. So the other thing I'm going to look at is motor brush alignment. What I'm looking to see is that the motor brushes sit in the same position. I can't adjust how much spring is in the actual arm that holds it. All I can do is bend it so that they're in the same position, and hope to God that that puts roughly the same amount of tension on each one. But you know what? I am going to leave that. I might even open that back up so I can put it back together. I'm going to leave that, and that's fine. So now I bend these tabs back over. I'm pushing the motor together at the same time so that there's no movement in the end bell to the body of the motor, because that's not what I want. And then check free spin afterwards that there's still movement. And this is before I put the motor brushes back, right? So it's got to be able to spin free. I'm just going to hit pause and grab some more oil. Alright. Motor brush, like com drops and a bit of oil. So obviously it's a brand new motor, so it's not lubricated. Don't need much. And then the com drops, oops, just on the com to help run it in. Sorry, I've got a habit of putting the caps in my mouth while I'm doing that. Right, so this now is ready for running in, and running in consists of running this in at around about half the voltage. Well, this is my method, this is not the only method, there'll be others out there who'll do it different. Running in at half the volts. I will just set up the dyno now. Alright, so I've got my dyno in place. I've got my power supply set up to 6 volts. You can't see it, sorry, it's out of that's close enough to 6. What I'm going to do, I'm going to install the motor. So just so we can see what the other one, the old one gets. So I bend these tabs over. And then I move them up so they're just proud, so they don't get tangled up and minced up being put in. Yeah, that's good. Alright, so this thing's getting better. Pretty much one of these things, 6 volts, 1.0, 1.1 would be what I'm looking for. I'm just going to reuse that pinion again. If anyone ever wondered what the holes on the end of the Viper pinion tool are, obviously if I was installing one in the chassis, I would use it to hold the guide pin in and put the stick in with the rear axle off and push it in, but I don't need to because the motor's out. I need a blade and I can't find one. You know what? So I just lift the brush hoods forward, and that's how I get them in without mincing them up. And then I check my location of my guide pin, and this is another reason to limit the amount of movement, because the last thing that you want is the nipple on the end of the guide pin touching they call this thing the T-boss. You don't want the end of the guide pin touching that in the movement of the armature. So there you go. So if your guide pin's a little bit worn, you can move it up and down to move where the worn section is for your gear mesh, because it's really, really good thing to have good gear mesh. Alright, so 6 volts. tell you what, for straight out of a packet, essentially just lubed and shimmed, that's not a bad result for a motor that's fresh. That's on the higher end of the scale of what I would expect to be decent enough. Now, as you can see, as I let it sit there, it's slowly bedding in, right? So I'll let this peak, and then I raise it up a volt. On track, this is my findings anyway. On track, if you've got a chassis that, and just to prove that's still on the same voltage, well, it's actually dropped a little bit through the dyno, but I haven't changed it on the power supply. By having a good result, middle speed, like mid voltage of the motor, it translates to really good mid-speed trigger. Because let's face it, when you're driving on a track the majority of the time, where you need all your controls middle trigger, because when the car's flat out, when you're off the trigger, you're off the trigger. So really what you need is good response, middle trigger. So anyway, that's good enough to top out. So that's raised up another volt, so that's at 7 volts now. And again, I just let it slowly bed in. There's no rush. I think the more time you spend running motors in at this stage, the better they end up. Now look here, for those who are a little bit, here we go, so we stick the temp gauge on it. What's it running at? 26.3 Celsius. So I stick that right on the centre of the armature, because that's the bit that gets hot. So what I aim for while running is for a motor that doesn't get above, if possible, 30 degrees centigrade, maybe 35. If it's getting any higher than that, then that means either the chassis got load on it, or the motor, like there's binding somewhere. So it's either poor gear mesh, too much load on the axles, too much load on the bearings, not enough lube, all sorts of things. There's no such thing as a distinct answer for exactly what's wrong. Interesting the way that's hovering away there. What's that about? Right, up another volt. Makes me think that motor's not in real good balance, but they are an unbalanced motor anyway. Probably the vibrations. So it's fluctuating a bit, and I reckon that's got to do with the bouncing. So there's raised up another volt, that's 9 volts. End result I'm looking for at 12.5 volts is somewhere around the 2.5 to 2.7. I'd be happy with that. Alright. 10 volts. I don't know how many other guys actually do this with their cars. There you go. There's 11 volts and I'm at 2.4. This is a good result. So there's 12. And now knock it up 12.5 and just leave it sit. I'm happy with that. But I still reckon now, so I'll run that back down to 6 volts. Alright, so there it is back on 6 volts. Oh. And it's still over 1.1. I'm happy with that. That's good. Bring on racing tonight, eh? Stoke. Look out, boys. Alright, thanks for watching. If you're learning something from watching my videos, or just like watching them, make sure you like and subscribe. If there's something in particular you want to see, let me know what it is. In the background, if anyone's wondering, the Tyco 440X2s, the Mazda RX-7, and the what do they call that thing? The Benetton. But yeah, just for something different to look at while I was doing this. But this Mazda's pretty tidy. I picked up some pretty good looking cars over the years. Tried to avoid paying collector prices, but hey, every now and then you got to pay them, hey? Every now and then. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Come back for more tips and how to do things on this channel. Alright, see you next video.